Hello everyone. Welcome to Principles of ATATURK and History of Turkish Revolution course. In this program, we'll focus on the early reform era and discuss the reigns of Sultan Selim III and Sultan Mahmud II. Let's first get the picture of the Ottoman Empire before Sultan Selim's reform program. When the French Revolution took place, the Ottoman lands spread over the Balkans, Anatolia, most of the Arab world, northern Africa, the Black Sea and its northern shores, and the Aegean Islands. In this vast geography, there were territorial and ideological problems in different parts of the empire. Selim III came to throne in the same year when the French Revolution broke out. The Treaty of Küçük Kaynarca had been signed, but Russia had violated the treaty by annexing Crimea, so the Ottomans had entered a war against Russia. What's more, they were at war with Austria too. As you can see, Selim III found himself in the middle of wars. The Treaty of Sistova with Austria and the Treaty of Jassy with Russia ended those wars, but they were a little problematic for the empire. This and other problems in the empire made Selim III introduce his reform program, Nizam-ı Cedid. Sultan Selim III started his reforms with the cavalrymen and the janissaries, but because of the opposition coming from them, he created a completely new infantry force. For this, obligatory military service was adopted in Anatolia. The new corps, composed of monthly paid soldiers, were trained and equipped with European standards. Because the traditional taxation system was insufficient to meet the expenses of these reforms, a new treasury called İrade Cedid was founded. Before the reign of Selim III, there had been reforms in education, such as the establishment of technical schools. Sultan Selim III founded Imperial Engineering School and the Imperial School of Military Engineering, mainly to support his reforms in military. He got help from British and French experts in these schools. The relationship with great powers was unstable though. For instance, when Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Egypt, the Ottomans became allies with Britain and Russia. Thereafter, whenever the Ottoman Empire needed help against a power, a third party became an ally. However, the Treaty of Tilsit between France, Russia, and Prussia revealed their secret plan, an eventual partition of the Ottoman Empire. Meanwhile, notables in the Balkans and Egypt were causing problems. Serbian nationalism in the Balkans and Wahhabi threat in the Arabian Peninsula were to be dealt with. Sultan Selim III had already devalued the coinage, increased the taxes, and confiscated some properties of wealthy merchants. The janissaries and the ulema were restless because of Selim's reforms. Sultan Selim twisted the knife in the wound. In 1806, he ordered some Nizam-ı Cedid corps to be stationed in Edirne. This meant conscription in the Balkans. Some notables resisted this, and with the support of Grand Vizier Hafız İsmail Ağa, they threatened the Sultan to march on Istanbul. Selim gave up, and the army came back to Istanbul. This event is known as the Edirne Incident. A year later, janissaries staged a rebellion under the leadership of Kabakçı Mustafa. Auxiliary janissaries refused to wear the new uniforms and to participate in intensive training. They allied themselves with the ulema. Sultan Selim failed to put down this rebellion, and as a result, he was deposed. When his cousin Mustafa IV ascended the throne with the support of the janissaries and the ulema, everything relapsed into the old order. The new army, schools, institutions were disbanded. Many Nizam-ı Cedid members were killed. The ones who escaped found refuge near Alemdar Mustafa Pasha in the Balkans. Alemdar Mustafa wanted Selim back on the throne, so he marched on Istanbul. But when he arrived, Selim had already been murdered. So he helped Mahmud II to come to power. When Sultan Mahmud II started his reforms, he acted more carefully and in fact more wisely. He knew that local notables were power holders in their provinces, so he made alliances with them. One of those notables was Alemdar Mustafa Pasha. Sultan Mahmud appointed him as Grand Vizier. Alemdar convened an assembly to which he invited high officials, governors, pashas, notables, and a number of ulama. The outcome of the assembly was Senedi İttifak. According to this agreement, notables would respect the central government, provide troops to the army, and pay taxes. In return, the rights and privileges of the notables were confirmed. However, Senedi İttifak couldn't be implemented mainly because notables couldn't unite under one roof, and because its creator, Alemdar Mustafa Pasha, died during a Janissary revolt. Yet, Senedi İttifak is known as the Ottoman Magna Carta as it limited Sultan's power. Actually, after Senedi İttifak, Alemdar Mustafa created a new army, Sekban-ı Cedid, and then attempted to reform the Janissary course. But the Janissaries started a rebellion because they thought Alemdar was trying to abolish their course. As a result, Alemdar Mustafa Pasha died during the rebellion, and Mahmud II had to restore the traditional course. Now, let's talk about the problems at the periphery during this period. The French Revolution affected the Ottoman Empire inevitably. We see this effect first in the Serb rebellion, which ended with an agreement between the Serbian Principality and the Ottomans. The Greek rebellion was bigger, however. The Ottomans lost control over Morea and many of the islands. When Greek rebels captured Athens, Mahmud II asked for help from Mehmet Ali Pasha of Egypt. Later, Britain, Russia, and France intervened in this conflict, and their joint fleet defeated the Ottoman Egyptian fleet at Navarino. What's more, Russians attacked Ottoman territories and captured Edirne, so the Treaty of Edirne was signed with Russia. According to the treaty, the Ottomans recognized the autonomy of Serbia, Moldova, Wallachia, and Greece under Russian protection. Greece was recognized as an independent monarchy in 1830. To compensate his losses at Navarino, Mehmed Ali Pasha demanded the governorship of Syria. When he was refused, he went on invading Syria and defeated the Ottoman army in Anatolia and occupied Kütahya. The Ottomans once more asked for help from the European powers, and the Russians agreed. However, later, with the intervention of Britain and France, the Convention of Kütahya was signed, Mehmed Ali Pasha became the governor of Syria and the province of Adana. In return to their aid, the Treaty of Hünkar İskelesi was signed with Russia, but later, European powers convinced the Ottomans to enter the London Convention. This convention brought the Ottoman Empire under the protection of Concert of Europe. Not accepting the loss of Syria, Sultan Mahmud sought British support against Mehmed Ali Pasha. The British signed the Anglo-Ottoman Convention with the Ottomans instead of attacking Egypt. Nonetheless, the Ottomans attacked the Egyptian forces in northern Syria, but they were defeated at Nizip. This defeat led to a great reform program called the Tanzîmât. So, how were the Janissary courts abolished? The Janissaries had been a legend and the fear of Europeans for a long time, but over time, they were involved in craft and trade activities. They also became very powerful in politics. After their incapability during the Greek rebellion, Sultan Mahmud II formed a new army called Eşkınciyan. Stating the obvious, the Janissaries rebelled once more. This time, by acting more quickly, Sultan Mahmud had most of the Janissaries killed, and the rebellion was put down in a very short time. In the end, the Janissary courts and their symbols were abolished. This event was widely known as Vakâ-i Hayriye. Sultan Mahmud further reformed the military by abandoning Eşkinci unit and forming a new army called Mansure troops in short. Their commander-in-chief was Serasker, who replaced the head Janissary. Mansure troops were responsible for public security, police duties, and firefighting. Sultan Mahmud's reforms in education were mostly related to the army. In addition to reviving the naval and military schools, he established the School of Military Sciences and Imperial Music School. Educational reforms for the civilian population included the Translation Office, which aimed at training the civil servants needed in the relations with the West. Rüşdiye schools, School for Judicial Education, and School for Literary Sciences were opened. Some students were sent to Europe, and most of those students and their sons became the next generation of state officials. Sultan Mahmud tried to reform the bureaucratic mechanism as well, by reorganizing civil bureaucracy under the Grand Vizier, judicial administration under Sheikh al-Islam, and military under Serasker. They became equal to one another and responsible to the Sultan. Treasury and justice departments and advisory councils were created. In 1829, a new clothing law was introduced, and this law eliminated the visual differences among men in bureaucracy. The new dress code can be associated with the headgear fez. Even a fez factory was built on the shores of the Golden Horn. In this period, the Ottoman Empire witnessed changes in furniture, social manners, and protocols, in all of which European style was adopted. Now, let's have a look at the reforms in press and publications and some other developments in this period. The first newspaper in the Ottoman Empire was in French and was published by the French embassy in Istanbul. The first local newspaper, Vakâi Misriya, was published in Egypt, half in Turkish, half in Arabic. The first official Ottoman newspaper was Moniteur Ottoman in French, and its Turkish version was Takvim-i Vakâi. It was the only newspaper published in Turkish until the publication of Ceride-i Havadis. In addition to an official newspaper, Sultan Mahmud held census and land surveys for an efficient system of taxation and recruitment of men for military. He introduced a postal system and constructed new roads as well. Sultan Mahmud's reforms came at a price. They required a great deal of money. All his efforts to increase state revenues failed, so the state faced a monetary deficit, which caused devaluation and inflation. Another shortcoming of Mahmud's reforms was the use of old and new laws in tandem. Sultan Mahmud didn't really interfere with the religious law, so the application of new laws and institutions became difficult. The reforms in bureaucracy weren't really effective either, because of the lack of trained and reliable personnel. For example, there were too few civil servants who knew European languages. Nevertheless, Sultan Mahmud's efforts definitely made reforms possible in the following periods. Now, we have already mentioned the Anglo-Ottoman Convention. We'll touch briefly on that in the last part of this program. In an attempt to find new markets for British products, Britain signed free trade agreements with different countries, and one of those was the Anglo-Ottoman Convention. This was after the British help against Mehmed Ali Pasha of Egypt. This treaty abolished the state monopolies and the right to impose extraordinary taxes. Local merchants and craftsmen benefited from this treaty, especially the Ottoman Greeks, who played an intermediary role between farmers and European industries. However, some traditional handcraft industries like cotton yarn production and clothing sector were badly affected. In some parts of the empire, unemployment increased. All in all, the Anglo-Ottoman Convention paved the way for liberal economic policies and ended protectionism. In conclusion, we can say that the Ottoman Empire was not a major world power anymore at the end of the 18th century. However, Selim III and Mahmud II's efforts in reforming the military, education, bureaucracy were definitely important in the course of modernization. Well, this is the end of our second program. In this video, we have discussed the early reform era. Join us for the next program. Goodbye.